On this comedy timeline, we're going to get our revenge. It's the revenge of the nerds. That's right, if there's one thing nerds are a stickler for, it's details and continuity things. So let's just see if the makers of this series live up to the legacy of its own characters. And you know what? I'm kind of pulling this look off. The Nerds go into action in 1984 with the original Revenge of the Nerds, kicking off with Gilbert and Lewis going off to college. And listen to this opening theme song by Devo.
Revenge of the Nerds. Nerds. Revenge of the Nerds.
Or a reasonable facsimile. Lewis's dad has a pig for a dog, and oh, there's that laugh. And were these sound effects necessary?
College isn't like high school. You'll be on your own. I want you to take care of you.
We meet Ogre and Stan, who doesn't quite live next to Al Bundy yet, and his girlfriend Betty. Dan Connor is the coach, and we meet the other nerds like Young Wormser, Poindexter, Stereotype Lamar, Other Stereotype Takashi, and Booger. They fix up a house together in a classic 80s montage, and this poster lets us know very clearly that we're in 1984. They get sponsored by Lambda Lambda Lambda, a primarily black fraternity, by UN Jefferson, and get the college experience with drugs and sex. After the jocks humiliate them, they decide to get revenge by, breaking into the sorority house to peep on them naked and steal their underwear, going so far as to push open their doors while they're topless on the other side, and chase a girl demanding to see her, quote, hair pie. Sexual assault is hilarious. They install cameras in their rooms to film them nude, so you know, even revenge for helping let pigs loose at their place. The nerds challenge the jocks in the Greek games in a bid to become president of the Greek Council, and they do pretty well. Now, here's where things get creepy. Lewis tries to kiss Betty, but she doesn't want to, probably because he's kinda stalking her. So Lewis disguises himself as Stan, and I'm not going to pull punches here. He rapes her. There's no two ways around it. He rapes her while his friends hand out naked pictures of her to everyone at the fair. Forget Revenge of the Nerds. How about Revenge of Betty? At most, she teased some guys and was kind of a bitch, but she's assaulted and sexually humiliated to the entire school. The kicker is that she apparently likes sex with Lewis, so everything's cool. Kids, hell, adults too, do not take advice from this movie. If you do any of the things that have been pictured here, you will not be the hero. You will go to jail. Well, the nerds win the games by way of an amazing musical number.
Clap your hands, everybody, and everybody clap your hand.
And wait, why is Takashi an Indian? Okay, I'll admit I haven't seen this for a while and it didn't really age well. Gilbert becomes the president of the Greek Council and the Betas destroy their house, so Gilbert heads to homecoming backed by the National Tri-Lambs. He makes an impassioned speech that wins over the audience and gets a happy ending all around, except maybe for Betty, who may have Stockholm Syndrome. A sequel came 3 years later with Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, which starts off with a Star Wars scroll to confirm that the first film took place in '84, and has Lewis packing up, and I guess he's either still with Betty or still stalking her. Poindexter's back. Lamar's here with a 1987 calendar letting us know that 3 years have passed, so they'd be juniors now. Wormser's here looking quite a bit grown up. And Booger's back, of course, and Gilbert basically cameos because he broke his leg and can't go on the trip. Lewis's dad is back, as is Ogre, as everyone heads to Fort Lauderdale for a fraternity conference, And Courtney Thorne-Smith shows up, and Lewis becomes creepy, like, immediately. I mean, he has a girlfriend, doesn't he? The guys start straight chasing unwilling women right away. I mean, what would they have done if they had caught these girls? Our villain pops in and he'll be killed by a merman one day, and watch out for Lopan. There's more betas, and one of them is the douche from Critters 2, and Lewis says that they were messed with last year but fought back and won, which would insinuate that the first film was just last year, so that would actually place this one in 1985, so I guess Lamar just really plans ahead with his calendars? Their frat status is challenged, so they make a new song, which is basically the same as the last one.
I ain't got threads or a Mercedes-Benz, but at least I have got some really good friends. Don't diss us. What? Don't dismiss us. Because one day you might want to kiss us.
And then to further confuse our dates, this Hustlers cover is from April 87. So we're in 87, so there's no way this is just 1 year later. So I guess the trouble that Lewis was talking about from last year was something different from the first film, and there's some 1986 unseen shenanigans that we just never get to know about. Cementing that is Wormser saying that he's 15 when he was 12 in the first film, so 3 years have passed, and his fake ID looks to have been issued in 86, so it's 87 for realsies. They have to save Ogre's life, Gilbert pops up in a dream, and they get a tank. It's complicated. With more backup from the Tri-Lambs. Lewis clocks Roger and kisses Sonny, cheating on his girlfriend right in front of all of his friends, and then they make Ogre a Tri-Lamb. It was 5 long years until the Nerds returned in 1982's Revenge of the Nerds 3: The Next Generation, which skipped the theaters and was made for TV. Morton Downey Jr. shows up, Stan Gable is back, but he's a cop now. We meet new nerds Ira and Harold, whose uncle is Lewis, who is now a yuppie and still with Betty, and they're still together, and I guess they're married, and I wonder if she knows about Sunny in Florida. More new nerds show up with Malcolm and Steve Toyota, Mason, and Edith. Stan says he's class of 1980, which makes no sense. If the first film was set in 1984, he couldn't have graduated in 80, unless for some reason he was talking about graduating high school? Even if he was, he wouldn't still be at Adams in 84, since that film took place in the fall, and he would have graduated in spring 84 then. Unless he took an extra year or something. Oren here lets us know that it's the 90s, so we're looking like real time, and he elects Stan to be the dean of the school. From motorcycle cop to college dean. No, that's a career path. What's this?
Well, rule number 1, here's what I seek. You must wear your Tri-Lamb beanie all heck week.
The beanie is a symbol of respect that all pledges must show to their Tri-Lamb elders.
What the hell is this? Lewis then says he's class of 81, which, again, doesn't make any sense since that means that he would have started at Adams in 77, and the first film definitely isn't in the 70s, so yeah, I guess ignore that? When the betas make the Nerds' life hell, they call in Booger, and they watch Studs, which only ran from 91 to 92, so we're placing this one in 92, although Booger says it's been 10 years since he's danced with a Moo, so again, I think they're either trying to place this one further ahead in time, or place the first film further back than they really are. Lewis returns to his nerd gear, the Kurgan shows up, Lewis gets framed, his dad shows up, as does Lamar, a recast Wormser, Takashi, UN Jefferson, and, Gilbert? I mean, if you're gonna have Gilbert in the movie, and you're gonna recast him, why this guy? He looks nothing like Anthony Edwards. Stan tells the truth, and Lewis goes free, and contrary to what the characters say, they graduated in 1988, 4 years ago. 2 years later, in 1994, there was another made-for-TV entry with Revenge of the Nerds 4, Nerds in Love, which is apparently about Booger's wedding. He's marrying the same girl who hooked up with Zed from Police Academy, so she has sketchy taste in men, and they apparently met 3 months ago. Lewis is his best man, Betty's pregnant, Lamar's back, Takashi's here, Harold and Trevor are back from the last one, and Nerd Stan is here too. Ogre makes his grand re-entrance, and James Cameron's here. We meet Booger's parents, and it's claimed that Booger has a love child from 12 years ago, and she was born in March of 1981. So that makes us set in 1993 here, and Booger would have been in high school. Everyone falls in love. UN shows up with Lewis's dad, but Betty goes into labor in the middle of the wedding. Booger's daughter turns out to be a setup, but they just decide to adopt her because, you know, that's how that works. The baby's born, the wedding happens, and the nerds are triumphant once again. There were actually several attempts to remake the original film, including one that made its way into principal photography. However, stopped shooting partway through, and the film was then shelved and cancelled. A pilot for a TV series was actually shot at one point, but was never ordered a series, and the legacy of the nerds seems to now be complete. So there you have it. It's 4 movies that are connected, but the continuity doesn't make any sense at all. The first and second film have a decent continuity, but then after that, things go way out of hand. They just seem to have no clue when these characters went to school, graduated, or whichever. They showed you a date flat out in the second movie that said that the first movie was in 1984. Flat out said it was. And then they're trying to say that they graduated in 1980. Does not make sense. So obviously somebody was not paying attention to the details there, which is a very un-nerd-like thing to do. Another interesting thing about this series is how prejudice works in this universe. It's a rather weird thing because nerds are treated like a straight-up minority class. And it seems to be the only form of prejudice that there is in this entire series. Take a look at how they handle Lamar. Lamar is a black gay man, and he's made fun of pretty constantly for being a nerd. Nothing else, for being a nerd. They talk a lot about oppression and everything like that the nerds have to go through and the nerds face, and it just seems weird you got Lamar sitting here, who's probably one of the few people that actually can talk about, like, being oppressed. And he doesn't say anything about that. He's just upset about being a nerd. So these didn't age well. The first one is rather jarringly sexist and kind of like borderline racist, I guess, in some ways, especially with the way they handle Takashi. So yeah, it can be pretty offensive. I mean, it has that AIDS happening there. Okay with that. You know what? Rape. I don't really care about the time frame. You can make fun of me all you want for that down below. That's fine. But it's rape. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my patrons over here. Let me know what you thought of this one down below. Support this channel if you want and feel like you can. And I'll see you in a little while for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye.